He built an entire wedding just to get her back, and she almost walked away from the only truth that ever mattered. If this story hits you somewhere deep, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Now sit down. This one's going to hurt before it heals. Oh. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, which was already a bad day. Nia Brooks had been on her feet for 11 hours straight in the trauma bay at Mercy General, and she was running on bad coffee and the specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't go away with sleep anymore. It goes bone deep. It sets up permanent residence somewhere between your shoulders and never leaves. She was pulling off her second pair of gloves for the night when the charge nurse flagged her down at the station. Hand-delivered, the nurse said, holding out a cream-colored envelope the way you hold out something you're not sure is safe to touch. Guy in a suit, no name on the building log, said it was personal. Nia took it. The paper was thick and smooth in a way that cost money. Real money, not the kind people pretended to have. No return address. No postage. Just her name written across the front in handwriting she recognized before she could stop herself from recognizing it. Kang Jun-seo had always pressed too hard with a pen. The letters were slightly too deliberate, like he was making a point just by putting them down. She'd teased him about it once, a long time ago, in what felt like a different world. She stood at that nurse's station for a full 30 seconds before she opened it. Inside was a wedding invitation printed on ivory cardstock with gold lettering, formal, expensive, the kind of thing that took months to design and produce. Kang Jun-seo and Park Soo-yeon, a private estate in Busan, South Korea. 6 weeks from now. At the bottom, below the formal Korean script and the embossed crane motif, someone had added 4 words in English. Handwritten, not printed. Please, I need you. Nia put the invitation back in the envelope. She put the envelope in her locker. She finished her shift. She drove home in the rain. She made herself eat something. She watched television without seeing it. She went to bed. She did not sleep. At 4:17 in the morning, she got up, went to her kitchen table, took the invitation out again, and read those 4 words until the sun came up. Then she booked a flight to Seoul. She hated herself a little for doing it, not because it was the wrong decision. She wasn't sure yet if it was wrong or right. She hated herself because of how fast she did it, because her hands didn't shake, because some part of her had been waiting 7 years for an excuse to stop pretending she was over him, and 4 words on expensive paper were apparently enough. That said something about her she wasn't ready to examine. Nia Brooks was 28 years old. She had 2 commendations from the hospital, a 1-bedroom apartment she barely spent time in, a mother who called every Sunday and asked careful questions, and a best friend named Dominique who would absolutely have told her not to go if Nia had told her about the invitation before buying the ticket, which was why she didn't tell Dominique until she was already at the gate. "You did what?" Dominique's voice came through the phone like something being torn. Nia, listen to me. That man hasn't spoken to you in 7 years. I know. And now he sends a wedding invitation. I know. To his own wedding. Dominique, and you bought a plane ticket. I'm boarding in 20 minutes. Silence. Then, he's getting married to someone else, and you're flying to Korea. Yes. That's either the bravest thing you've ever done or the dumbest. Probably both, Nia said. Another silence, softer this time. What do those 4 words mean, Nia? What does I need you mean when someone is marrying another woman? Nia looked out the terminal window at the dark tarmac, the lights of the ground crew moving in slow patterns. I don't know yet. And you're going anyway. Yeah, Dominique exhaled. Call me the second you land, and if he hurts you again, I will personally fly to South Korea, and I know, Nia said, I love you. I love you too, you absolute idiot. She boarded the plane. She didn't sleep on that flight either. 14 hours is a long time to sit with your own thoughts. Long enough to reconstruct a history you've spent years trying to dismantle. Long enough to remember things in a detail you normally manage to keep blurred. Kang Jun-seo had come into her life the way weather comes. Not because you invited it, just because it arrived and then became the new condition of everything. Their families had known each other since before either of them could remember. The Kangs had maintained a significant international presence in Chicago, shipping and logistics on the surface, something considerably more complex underneath. And her family had been in the orbit of that world long enough that their children grew up half aware of it, and mostly not asking questions. She and Junseo had been 7 years old the first time they met. He'd been standing outside during a formal dinner, alone in the garden in a suit that was too grown up for him, looking at the Chicago skyline like he was trying to memorize it in case someone took it away. She'd found him because she was hiding from the dinner too, and they'd sat out there in the dark for 2 hours talking about absolutely nothing. What animals they'd seen, whether the stars looked different from Korea, whether it was possible to be tired in a way sleep didn't fix. He'd said yes to that last one. He was 8. She'd never forgotten it. They grew up alongside each other in the erratic way children of international families do. Long stretches apart, then sudden periods of intense closeness when his family was in Chicago or hers was traveling. They wrote letters when they were young, then emails, then texts. They fought sometimes, the way people who are too similar fight, and made up in the specific way of people who can't quite figure out how to be angry at each other for long. They were never officially anything. That was the thing she'd carried for 20 years before the lie that ended it. They were never anything she could point to. They were just constant. He was the person she called when something happened, good or bad. He was the person whose opinion mattered in a way she couldn't explain and mostly didn't try to. He was the person she thought about in the space between other thoughts, the background hum of someone important. And she was apparently the same for him. She'd found that out secondhand from a source she trusted, and then found out it was wrong, and by then there was nothing left to find. Nia pressed her forehead against the cold airplane window and made herself stop going over it. 7 years of dissecting that night hadn't changed it. Whatever had happened, whatever had been said and twisted and weaponized, she was landing in Seoul in 6 hours, and there was no version of the next few days that would be comfortable. She concentrated on that, on the practical difficulty ahead of her. That was easier to hold than the other thing, the thing that had made her buy the ticket in the first place without thinking too hard about why. She landed at Incheon at 6 a.m. local time, cleared customs on what felt like autopilot, and found a driver holding a sign with her name at the arrivals gate. She hadn't arranged a driver. The car was a black SUV with tinted windows, the kind that communicated without words that whoever owned it was not interested in being seen. The driver was polite and spoke limited English. He knew where she was going. Of course he did. The drive to Busan was nearly 5 hours. She slept for most of it, finally, fitfully, in the back seat with her jacket folded under her head. When she woke up, they were on the coast road south of the city, and the sea was enormous and gray-green on her left, and the cliffs were cut sharp against a sky that hadn't decided yet whether it was going to be sunny or not. The estate was at the end of a private road that curved up through cypress trees, iron gates, stone walls, the kind of privacy that required real effort to maintain. When the gates opened and the car moved through, Nia sat up straighter and tried to look like someone who had not been traveling for 19 hours and was not running on emergency reserves of whatever got you through the next hour when the previous hours had already spent everything you had. The estate itself was, there was no honest way to call it anything other than breathtaking, even through exhaustion. The main house was white stone, traditional roofline, set back from the cliffs on a flat terrace of land that ended in a sheer drop to the sea. Manicured grounds, flower arrangements at every entrance. White flowers, hundreds of them, the kind that take a team of florists days to assemble. Crystal light fixtures catching the coastal sun in the windows. White fabric draped from the terrace railings in long panels that moved in the sea wind. A wedding, except Nia stepped out of the car and looked around. The place was almost entirely empty. No guests, no families gathered on the terrace, no catering staff working in organized chaos, no music, no photographers positioning themselves, no bridesmaids in coordinating dresses, no excited relatives. A few security men positioned at intervals. She clocked them immediately, the stillness of men who stand like that professionally. 2 staff members near the entrance, watching her arrive. No bride, no wedding energy of any kind, just the flowers. Just the expensive arrangements, just the fabric moving in the wind, and something that felt very wrong. A woman in a charcoal blazer appeared at the entrance and introduced herself as Mina, and explained in careful English that she would be shown to a room where she could rest and refresh before the afternoon schedule. When Nia asked about other guests, Mina's expression went professionally neutral in a way that people learn from being trained to give nothing away. The afternoon schedule will address everything, Mina said. Nia let herself be led inside. She needed a shower and food before she had any kind of confrontation, and she was now fairly certain there was going to be a confrontation. She'd need to be steady for it. Her room was on the second floor, large, immaculate, a view of the sea that in any other context would have been the whole point. A tray with food had been arranged on a table by the window. There was no luggage beyond her carry-on because she'd packed for 3 days in uncertainty. She showered. She changed. She ate standing at the window looking at the water. She gave herself exactly 30 minutes to feel afraid. Then she went looking for answers. The staff deflected politely. The security men said nothing at all. The estate felt less like a house preparing for a celebration and more like a location preparing for something it wasn't going to announce in advance. She walked the ground floor. She found a reception hall set with arrangements but no seating, a terrace laid with white cloth on the railings but no chairs, a kitchen working with minimal staff. It was a set. That was the word that surfaced. It looked like a set, like someone had dressed a location for the appearance of a wedding without populating it with the things a wedding actually needed. A wedding needed people. A wedding needed a bride. When she turned from the empty reception hall and headed back toward the main corridor, a door at the far end opened, and 2 men in suits stepped through and positioned themselves on either side of it. Then Mina reappeared and said quietly, "He's ready to see you now." Nia walked the length of that corridor and didn't let her pace change. The room was a private sitting room toward the back of the house, with tall windows on 2 sides and afternoon light coming in strong. There were no arrangements in here, no flowers, no ceremony decor, just furniture, books on shelves, a fireplace that wasn't lit, and Jun Seo. He was standing near the window with his back partly to her when she came in, and he turned when he heard the door. He was wearing the ceremonial suit, black, immaculately cut, the kind of formal Korean dress that didn't leave any room for casualness. He looked like what he was, the head of something powerful, dressed for a public occasion that had been built for the audience of one person currently standing in his doorway. 7 years. He looked different and exactly the same in the way that people do when you've carried their face in your memory so long that the real version both confirms and contradicts what you've been holding. The angles of his face were sharper. There were marks around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He held himself with a stillness she didn't remember, the kind that comes from years of being watched and learning to control what you give away. But his jaw tightened the way it always had when he was working out what to say. That part hadn't changed. Nia stayed near the door. "Where's your fiancé?" "Sit down, Nia. Answer the question." He looked at her directly. "There is no fiancé." The words landed flat and she let them. The invitation said, "I know what it said. Park Soo-yeon is a name." "Whose name?" "No one's," he said. "She doesn't exist." Nia felt the air change in the room, the way it changes before weather. She was aware of her own breathing, deliberate, controlled, the practiced stillness of someone who works in emergency medicine and has learned to manage the physical symptoms of shock in real time. "Say that again," she said. "There was no wedding. There is no other woman." His voice was even, but he was watching her the way he'd always watched her. Too carefully, the way you watch something that matters too much to look away from. "The invitation was the only way I could guarantee you'd come. You built an entire fake wedding, yes? Flowers and invitations and an estate in Busan, yes. Because you wanted to have a conversation." Something crossed his face that wasn't quite guilt and wasn't quite defiance. "Because you blocked every number I had. You returned my letters unopened for the first 2 years, and then they started being delivered back from an address that wasn't yours anymore. I found every channel I had access to, and you'd closed every one." "You could have stopped," Nia said. "People generally take that as a signal." "I did stop," he said. "I stopped for 4 years, and it made no difference. So here we are." Here we are. She wanted to leave. She could feel the wanting of it. The clean option of turning around and walking back through that corridor and out to the car and back to Seoul and back to Chicago and back to the life she'd reconstructed out of what was left after everything fell apart. She could do that. The door was behind her. She didn't move. "Why?" she said. "Why now? Why this way?" He crossed to a shelf along the far wall and picked up something she hadn't noticed when she walked in. A box. Plain wood, unremarkable except for the size. He set it on the low table between them. "Open it," he said. Nia didn't move for a moment. Then she went to the table and opened the box. Letters. A stack of them, thick, bound together. Beside them, a slim binder of printed material she recognized as encrypted message transcripts, decoded. And beneath those, a small recording device with a list of files. She picked up the top letter. It was in English, which he'd always defaulted to with her because her Korean was functional but imperfect, and his English was fluent, and he'd always made that adjustment without being asked to. The date at the top was 7 years ago, 3 weeks after the night everything ended. "Nia," it began, "I need you to understand what actually happened, not what you were told, what I said, and what I meant." She put it back in the box. Her hands were steady. She was proud of her hands. "You've been waiting to show me this," she said. "Yes." "For how long?" "I've had the letters for 6 years. The recordings are more recent. 3 years." "Recordings of what?" His jaw moved. "Of a conversation I had with Serena Vaughn, 2 years after the night you left. She was less careful by then. She thought enough time had passed." He paused. "She told someone what she'd done. I had people monitoring her communications. I wasn't supposed to intercept the call, but my security team flagged it." Serena Vaughn. Nia set the box lid back down carefully. Serena Vaughn had been one of the few people who existed in both their worlds. A mutual friend with access to the closed circles of the Kong family's social ecosystem and to Nia's own life. The kind of connector who made herself useful by knowing everyone and being trusted by all sides. She'd been the one to pull Nia aside at a function 7 years ago, her face arranged in the particular expression of someone delivering devastating news with sympathy covering something else. "He thinks it's funny," Serena had said. "The way you feel about him, he was laughing about it with his people. I thought you should know. You deserve better than to be someone's joke." Nia had walked out of that function and confronted him in front of 200 people, business figures, family representatives, people whose opinions carried weight in multiple criminal ecosystems. She'd kept her voice controlled and her words precise, which somehow made it worse. She'd said what she'd come to say, turned, and left. She'd been so certain. She'd been so utterly, completely certain. "Tell me what she twisted," Nia said. Her voice came out flat. Not cold exactly, just stripped down to what it needed to be. "I told her I was in love with you." He said it without ceremony, the way you say things you've had time to stop being afraid of. "I told her I was terrified that if I pushed for something more than what we had, I'd lose the whole thing, the friendship, the whatever it was between us, all of it." He stopped. "She took that and made it into something else. She said you were laughing at me." "I know what she said. She was very specific." "She's very good at specific," he said. "It makes things credible. The detail is the thing that sells it." Nia moved away from the table. She needed space between herself and the box, between herself and him. She went to the window and looked out at the sea, gray and restless below the cliffs, nothing on the horizon. "Why would she do that?" Nia said. "She wanted a position in my organization." He let that sit for a moment. "She thought removing you from the picture created an opening. I was distracted by other things. I didn't see it coming. I should have." Nia stared at the sea. 7 years. A lie told by someone who wanted something, positioned perfectly, delivered at exactly the right moment to detonate everything. "You should have come after me harder," she said. "You should have—" "I tried." His voice was controlled, but there was something underneath it that wasn't. "For 2 years I tried, and then your mother told me the last time I called that you'd moved on, that you were well, that my reaching out was hurting you." Nia closed her eyes briefly. Her mother, who would have said exactly that, because her mother had watched her daughter fall apart and rebuild herself and fall apart again through 2 years of trying not to care, and her mother would have made the call she thought was protecting her. "She didn't know the full story," Nia said quietly. "I figured, eventually." He paused. "I stopped. For 4 years I respected it. And then I found out what Serena had done, and I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't." Nia turned from the window. Junseo was still standing where he'd been, near the table. He hadn't moved to close the distance between them. He wasn't going to. She could see that. Whatever this was, he wasn't going to push it past what she let it be, which was somehow worse than if he'd tried to. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you to read the letters. I want you to listen to the recording. I want you to know what actually happened." He met her eyes. "And then I want you to tell me, honestly tell me, whether there's anything left. And if there isn't, I will never contact you again." "You built a fake wedding and flew me to South Korea for a conversation." "Yes." "That's insane." "Yes," he said again, with the particular flatness of someone who has accepted that fact completely. "I'm aware." Nia looked at him for a long moment, then she walked to the table and picked up the recording device. "I need to be alone," she said. He nodded once, moved toward the door. "Junseo?" He stopped. "Where is Serena now?" His expression shifted in a way she couldn't quite read. "She's been reassigned. She doesn't have access to my world anymore." Nia looked at him. "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." He left her alone in the room with the box. She stood at the table and didn't touch anything for approximately 3 minutes. She counted her own heartbeats. 41, 42. She breathed the way they'd taught her in her first year of nursing training, the technique for staying present when everything in you wants to either freeze or run. Then she sat down, pulled the box toward her, and started with the first letter. She didn't finish until after dark. The letters were not what she'd expected. She'd expected explanations, justifications, the careful reconstruction of events that people build when they want to be believed. That was there. But underneath it was something else. 7 years of a man trying to work out, on paper, in real time, what had happened to the person who'd been the fixed point of his internal compass. She read letters about decisions he'd made that referenced how she would have challenged them. She read letters about places he'd traveled that noticed details she would have pointed out. She read one letter that was entirely about a meal he'd had in Osaka that he'd wanted to describe to her. And somehow that one was the worst because there was nothing strategic in it. Just a man writing a letter to someone he couldn't reach, because talking to her was still the reflex even after it was no longer possible. The recording was harder. Serena's voice, 3 years ago, on what she must have thought was a private call, explaining to someone, a man whose voice was unfamiliar, how she'd created the situation 7 years earlier. She was matter-of-fact about it. Efficient, even. The details were accurate and specific in the way that only first-hand knowledge produced. I told her he was laughing. I made sure to give her enough detail that it was convincing. A pause, something like satisfaction in her voice. She confronted him in front of the whole room. It was perfect. After that, there was nothing for him to come back from. "And he never found out it was you?" He suspected, eventually, no apparent concern, but by then she was gone, and what was he going to do about it? The recording ended. Nia put the device down on the table. Outside the windows, the sea was black and the sky above the cliffs had filled with stars. She had rebuilt her entire life on a false foundation. She had made every decision of the last 7 years. The choices about what to keep close and what to push away, the particular careful distance she maintained in every relationship, the way she worked until exhaustion was preferable to going home to her own thoughts. She had made all of it in response to something that hadn't happened. She had spent 7 years being angry at a man who had been trying to reach her. And she had spent 7 years missing him in the way you miss something that's gone. Not the real missing, the active kind, but the low-grade constant awareness of an absence that becomes the background of your life. She stood up from the table. Her legs were stiff from sitting for hours. She moved to the window and pressed her palm flat against the cold glass and let herself be still for a minute. There was a knock at the door. She turned. "Come in." It was Mina carrying a tray, tea and food. She set it on the table and left without speaking, which Nia was grateful for. She drank the tea standing. She was going to have to decide something. She understood that clearly. She was going to have to go back into that corridor and find Junseo and say something that would be either a beginning or an ending, and there was no version of doing that halfway. That had been the problem the first time. She hadn't made a choice. She'd reacted to someone else's manipulation, and the reaction had looked like a choice until the ground fell out from under it. This time there would be an actual choice. She wasn't ready. She was here anyway. She set down the cup, picked up the box of letters, and went looking for him. She found him outside, on the terrace at the back of the house, facing the sea. He'd changed out of the ceremonial suit into something simpler, and he was standing at the terrace railing in the dark with the sea wind coming off the cliffs and the stars overhead and the sound of the water below. When she pushed open the glass door, he heard her and turned. She crossed the terrace and stopped a few feet from him. The wind was cold. She hadn't brought a jacket. "Why twice?" she said. He looked at her. "You said you almost got engaged twice. I want to know about that." He held her gaze for a moment. Then he turned back to the sea. 2 years apart, different women, both good, both people I respected. What happened? A long pause. "I couldn't see it," he said. "I couldn't see a future with them that felt real. It kept collapsing. Every time I tried to imagine something actual, it just didn't hold together." He paused again. "Both times I ended it before it went too far. It wasn't fair to either of them." "Why didn't it hold together?" He looked at her then, directly, and didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Nia felt the weight of what was in the air between them. All the years of it, all the letters, the recordings, the false wedding, the accumulated mass of everything they'd been to each other across 20 years, and then the 7 years of damage, and now this moment, this cold terrace, this starlit sky above the Korean coast. "I don't forgive you for this," she said, meaning the fake wedding, meaning all of it. "I need you to know I don't forgive it easily. It's a lot." "I know. It's genuinely one of the most dramatic things anyone has ever done." Something shifted in his face. Almost something. "I know. You're a billionaire crime boss who staged a fake international wedding to get his childhood best friend to return his calls. When you put it that way, there is no other way to put it, Junseo." He looked at her. The almost something was there again. The specific reluctant quality she'd always read as his version of a smile fighting its way through his natural gravity. "I ran out of options. You had other options." "I ran out of the ones I was willing to use," he said. Nia stared at him. Then she set the box of letters on the terrace railing between them, and the wind moved her hair against her face, and somewhere below the cliffs the sea was loud and cold and entirely indifferent to the two people standing above it. "I need time," she said. "All right. I need to be somewhere that isn't here for a few days. Seoul. A hotel. Somewhere I can think without all of this around me." She gestured vaguely at the estate, the flowers, the engineered setting of his elaborate gambit. "I'll have a room arranged at whatever hotel you want." "I'll arrange my own hotel," she said. "Okay. I'll call you," she said. "When I'm ready." "Okay," he said again. She picked up the box, held it against her chest for a moment. Then she looked at him. This man she'd known for 20 years, who had done an absolutely unhinged thing for the most specific possible reason. And she said, quietly, "You better not have done all of this for nothing." He held her gaze. "I haven't been doing nothing for 7 years." Nia walked back through the glass doors and into the warmth of the estate, her heart doing something loud and complicated in her chest. She made it as far as the corridor before she leaned against the wall, pressed the back of her hand to her mouth, and let herself feel it for 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Then she straightened up and walked to her room to pack. She was 3 steps from her door when her phone rang. Chicago number. Unfamiliar. She almost didn't answer. She was on edge and exhausted and somewhere in the middle of the most emotionally complex situation of her life, and the last thing she needed was a spam call on another continent. But something made her answer. "Ms. Brooks." The voice was professional, female, careful. "My name is Agent Dana Kim. I'm with the FBI's Organized Crime Division. We understand you're currently in South Korea as a guest of the Kang organization." A brief pause. "We need to talk. Tonight, if possible." Nia's hand tightened on the phone. "I think," the voice continued, "you may not have a complete picture of what you've walked into." The corridor was very quiet. "What do you mean?" Nia said carefully. "The Kang organization is currently under active federal investigation," Agent Kim said. "Your presence in South Korea has been logged. We don't believe you're involved, Ms. Brooks, but someone is using this event as cover, and if you stay, you may not be able to leave when you want to." Nia stared at the door to her room. "Tell me everything," she said. Nia didn't sleep that night either. She stood in the corridor for 3 full seconds after the call ended, phone still warm in her hand, and ran through her options the way she'd been trained to run through emergency protocols. Fast, systematic, without the luxury of panic. The walls of the estate corridor were pale stone, and the light overhead was warm, and everything around her was quiet and expensive and completely disconnected from the word federal hanging in the air of her skull. She went to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed. She called Agent Kim back on the number that had appeared on her screen. It rang 4 times. "Ms. Brooks." Kim picked up immediately, like she'd been waiting. "Good." "How did you get this number?" Nia said. "We've had a file on the Kang organization's extended network for 3 years. You appear in a peripheral capacity, childhood connection, no organizational involvement. When you boarded a flight to Seoul 48 hours ago, it flagged automatically. You've been watching me. We've been watching the network. You happened to move." Kim's voice was measured, professional without being warm. "I want to be clear. You are not a target. You're a potential witness and a potential liability, depending on how the next 72 hours go. Liability to who? To yourself, primarily." A pause. "There's a secondary faction operating within the Kang organization. They are not aligned with Junseo. They've been positioning for 18 months, and this event, whatever cover story brought you here, is being used as a coordination point. There are people in that estate right now who are not there for a wedding." Nia looked at the wall. "How do you know that?" "We have a source," Kim said. "I can't tell you more than that." "Then tell me what you want from me." A short silence on the other end. "Nothing tonight. I want you to leave the estate tomorrow morning, as you've apparently already planned to. Go to Seoul, stay somewhere public. Don't contact Junseo for at least 48 hours. And then? And then I'd like to meet in person." Nia ran her thumb along the edge of her phone case. The room was quiet. Outside the window, the sea was still doing what seas do. Indifferent, continuous, enormous. "If what you're describing is true," Nia said carefully, "then Junseo doesn't know." "We believe that's correct. Or he does know, and he's part of it." Kim didn't answer immediately, which was its own answer. "That's what we're still working out," she said finally. Nia lay back on the bed with her arm across her face and stared at the ceiling she couldn't see. The morning was gray and cool when she left the estate. She'd packed the night before, organized her carry-on with the specific efficiency of someone who needs to feel in control of at least one thing. She'd put the box of letters in the bag. She wasn't sure why. She told herself it was evidence. She told herself a lot of things in the dark between 2 and 4 in the morning. Junseo was at the entrance when she came down with her bag, not waiting. That wasn't quite the right word. He was standing near the door talking to one of his men, and he stopped when she appeared at the bottom of the stairs. His expression didn't change much. It never did. That had always been the thing about him. You had to know where to look. "You're leaving now," he said. Not a question. "Seoul," she said. "Like I told you." He nodded slowly. His eyes moved over her face in a way that was quick and thorough, the specific assessment of someone checking for damage. "Did you sleep?" "A little." He knew that was a lie. She could see him know it. He didn't press it. "I'll have Mina give you the driver. I have a car coming," Nia said. She'd booked a private car through the hotel app. She wasn't getting in his car. She wasn't giving him that geographic data. She wasn't sure yet what she was doing or trusting, and until she was sure, she was operating on the assumption that nothing was as simple as it had appeared when she was reading his letters by lamplight. He studied her for a moment. Something happened. "I need time to think, Junseo. That's what I told you. You were fine last night on the terrace." He paused. "Now you look like you're calculating exits." Damn him. He'd always been able to read her. It was useful when they were 12. It was inconvenient now. "I'm tired," she said. "I've been on another continent for 36 hours. I'm a trauma nurse running on no sleep and about 4 pounds of emotional information I haven't processed yet. I need a hotel room in 48 hours. He held her gaze for 3 seconds. "All right, I'll call you." "I'll answer," he said. Her car arrived 8 minutes later and she got in it without looking back, which cost her more than she was willing to admit. Seoul was 4 hours north. She spent most of it watching the landscape shift from coastal cliffs to flatter ground to the dense compressed weight of a city that didn't stop. She'd been to Seoul twice before, once at 16 with her family, once at 22 for a conference. It was a city she knew well enough to navigate and not well enough to disappear in, which was roughly the problem. She'd booked a room at a mid-range hotel near Mapo, not the kind of place his organization would automatically flag as associated with international networks, not a backpacker spot. Anonymous middle ground. She paid cash for 2 nights at the desk. Her room was on the 7th floor. She dumped her bag on the bed, opened her laptop, and started doing what she should have done before she boarded the plane to Seoul in the first place. Research. She knew the shape of the Kang organization, knew it the way children of families in adjacent orbits know things, through osmosis and overheard conversations, and the specific education you get from being around power that doesn't announce itself. Kang Sung-won, Junseo's father, had built the foundation across 3 decades. International shipping was the legitimate face. The network underneath it touched ports from Busan to Rotterdam, and the things moving through those ports were not always on the manifests. Junseo had taken formal control 6 years ago when his father's health declined. She knew that much. Dominique had sent her an article once, some business publication, and Nia had read it 3 times and then deleted it from her inbox. What she hadn't known, what she started finding now, in the careful language of financial investigative journalism and court documents filed in U.S. federal court 2 years ago, was that the organization had fractured internally around the time of the succession. 2 senior lieutenants had contested the transfer. One had been removed from his position, one had apparently accepted the new structure and remained, and, according to a sealed complaint she found referenced in a federal court index, had been the subject of an internal investigation by the Kang organization itself. His name was Park Dae-ho. She stared at that name. Park. The same family name on the fictional bride's invitation, Park Soo-yeon. She sat with that for a long moment and felt something cold settle in the back of her throat. She called Agent Kim. Park Dae-ho, Nia said when Kim answered. Is he the secondary faction you mentioned? A pause that told her she was right before Kim confirmed it. Yes, he's the one we're watching. He's still inside the organization. Junseo believes he's controlled the situation, Kim said. He's wrong. And the name on the invitation, Park Soo-yeon, coincidence or provocation, we're not sure yet. Possibly someone with knowledge of that name planted it. Possibly Junseo chose it without knowing the association. Kim's voice was precise. That's actually one of the things I need to understand better, which is why I want to meet. Where and when? They met that evening at a coffee shop in Mapo, the kind of place with communal tables and enough ambient noise to make private conversation possible without being conspicuous. Agent Kim was younger than her phone voice suggested, Korean-American, mid-30s, with the kind of posture that came from years of needing to be taken seriously in rooms that defaulted to not taking her seriously. She was in civilian clothes. She had a coffee. She wasn't really drinking. Nia sat across from her and didn't touch hers either. Tell me what you know about Park Dae-ho, Kim said. Almost nothing. I found the name in a federal court index. What's he actually doing? Kim considered how much to give. He's been siphoning resources from the organization for 2 years, building his own network, smaller, more aggressive, not interested in the legitimate cover that the Kang operation has spent 30 years constructing. She paused. He's also been in contact with a rival syndicate out of Osaka. We believe he's planning a transfer of control, not a hostile takeover of the Kang organization, but a handover of specific assets and routes that would effectively destroy the legitimate face of it. And Junseo doesn't know. Junseo knows something is wrong. He doesn't know the scale. Kim met her eyes. The gathering at the Busan estate, whatever he told you it was for, it also pulled together several of his key operational people. Park Dae-ho was among them. Nia felt the cold thing in her throat move down into her chest. He used my arrival as cover, she said slowly. Or someone used it. We think Park used the event to move people into position under the cover of the ceremony preparations. Kim leaned forward slightly. Here's what I need from you, Ms. Brooks. You have access to Junseo that my office doesn't have. You're not law enforcement. You're not a known federal asset. You're a woman he clearly trusts. Don't, Nia said. Kim stopped. Don't pitch me like I'm a resource, Nia said. Tell me what the actual situation is and let me make a decision. Kim held her gaze. Then she nodded once, conceding the point. Fair enough. The actual situation is this. Within the next 48 to 72 hours, we believe Park Dae-ho is going to make a move. We don't know exactly what form it takes. It might be financial. It might be something more direct. If Jun-seo goes into that without knowing what's coming, the outcome is bad for him and worse for the investigation, because the investigation needs him intact to build a case against Park's network and the Osaka connection. You need him to survive this. We need the situation not to explode in a way that can't be reconstructed, Kim said. There's a difference. Is there? Kim looked at her table. He's not a good man, Ms. Brooks. I want to be honest about that. The organization he runs has done real harm. But Park Dae-ho is worse, and what Park is building would be worse, and sometimes the only path forward is through the least bad option. Nia sat with that. What do you want me to do? She said finally. Call him. Meet with him. Find out if he's aware of Park's movements. If he's not, Kim paused. Tell him. Not as a federal asset, not as anything official, just as someone who found out something he needs to know. And if he is aware, if he's part of it, then you leave, Kim said. Immediately. And you call me. Nia stared at the coffee she hadn't touched. The cafe noise moved around them. Other conversations, the sound of cups on tables, a television showing something with the volume down. Why didn't you just contact him directly? Nia said. We tried. 3 months ago, through official channels. His attorneys shut it down. He doesn't talk to us. Kim's expression was flat. But he flew you across an ocean. There it was, clean and simple and completely transactional. I need tonight, Nia said. I need to think. You have tonight. Nia stood up. If I do this, if I talk to him, it's because I decide it's the right thing, not because you asked me. I understand. I don't want anything from you in return. Not protection, not immunity, not anything implied. Understood. And I'm not wearing a wire, Nia said. Kim's expression shifted slightly. I wasn't going to ask. I know, Nia said. I'm telling you preemptively. She left the cafe and walked back toward the hotel in the Seoul evening. The streets were full. The specific, comfortable density of a city that breathes through its people. The sound of traffic and food stalls and conversations in a language she caught maybe 1 word in 10. She walked for 40 minutes instead of taking a cab. She needed her legs under her and the cold air and the movement. By the time she got back to the hotel, she knew what she was going to do. She sat on the edge of the bed with her phone and called Dominique first. How bad is it? Dominique said immediately. The situation is complicated. Define complicated. He didn't lie about Serena. She did what he said she did. A long silence. Oh, Nia. Yeah. So the fake wedding was still insane, Nia said. And also, apparently, the least complicated part of why I'm here. She heard Dominique absorb that. What's the other part? I can't tell you the other part right now. She rubbed the back of her neck. Dom, if I tell you I'm going to do something that's complicated and probably not fully safe, are you going to tell me not to? Obviously. And if I do it anyway? Obviously, Dominique said again, quieter. Are you in danger? Not right now. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. She stopped. I need to know you know I'm here. I need one person to know where I am and what I'm doing. Then tell me, Dominique said. All of it. She told her. Not the federal investigation. She kept that back. Not because she didn't trust Dominique, but because the less exposure, the better. She told her about Serena, about the letters, about the terrace conversation, about the specific, complicated architecture of what she felt and what she knew and what she still didn't know. Dominique listened all the way through without interrupting, which was rare enough that Nia noted it. You love him, Dominique said when she was done. That's not the point right now. It's literally the whole point. Dom, you flew to South Korea on 4 words, Nia. You read his letters for 6 hours. You're sitting in a Seoul hotel room talking to me instead of sleeping because you're trying to figure out how to help him with something you're not even sure he knows is happening. Dominique's voice was careful. That's love. That's specifically love. You don't have to call it that tonight, but you should know that's what it is. Nia closed her eyes. Get some sleep, Dominique said. Call him in the morning. Do the thing you're going to do, and then come home. Yeah. I mean it. Come home. I will, Nia said. She hung up. She set her phone on the nightstand. She lay back in the dark with her hands on her stomach and breathed in through 4 counts and out through 4 counts and let her body metabolize everything it was carrying. She slept for 5 hours. She called Junseo at 7 in the morning. He answered on the second ring, which meant he'd been awake, which meant he'd probably been awake for hours. I need to see you, she said. Today. Not at the estate. Somewhere in the city. A brief pause. All right? And I need you to come alone. A longer pause. That's not alone, she said. Or I'll tell you what I know over the phone, which I'd rather not do. She heard him calculate. She could almost feel it across the signal. The particular friction of a man who had spent years operating with a security perimeter around himself at all times, being asked to step outside it. There's a park, he said. Hanul Park, near Mapo. I'll meet you at the east entrance at 10. She was there at 9:45. The park was elevated, built on reclaimed land that rose above the city, with long grass slopes and wide paths, and the Han River visible from the higher points. At 10 in the morning, on a weekday, it was populated without being crowded, families, joggers, older couples on morning walks. She could see anyone approaching from 50 meters. He was on time. He came without visible security, which she noted, though she had enough working knowledge of how these things operated to understand that alone was a relative term. His people were probably somewhere within line of sight, and she'd never pick them out. He found her near a bench at the east edge of the upper path, where the river was visible below, and the city spread out beyond it. He was in civilian clothes, dark jeans, a gray jacket. He looked like a person who belonged here, which was the kind of practiced normalcy that took effort. He sat down beside her on the bench. Not close. He left room. He was always careful about that. She always waited for her to define the distance. You found out something, he said. Yes? Tell me. She told him about Agent Kim. Not everything. She didn't hand him federal investigation details he could use strategically. She told him about Park Dae-ho, about the Osaka connection, about the 48 to 72-hour window Kim believed was in play. She watched his face while she talked. He was very still. She'd expected some version of denial, or the careful non-reaction of someone who already knew. What she got was something else. The particular quality of stillness that she'd learned in the emergency room belonged to the moment between impact and the body's comprehension of impact. When she finished, there was a silence. How long have you known this? He said. Since last night. Kim contacted you last night. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. She watched his hands on his knees, flat, controlled. She called you before she knew we'd spoken, before she knew the situation between us. She said you appeared on a flag when I boarded the flight. She's been watching both of us. He said it without inflection, stating a fact rather than expressing an emotion about it. She said she tried to contact you directly 3 months ago. She did. His jaw tightened. I had my attorneys shut it down. I wasn't... He stopped. I was managing another situation. I didn't have the bandwidth to open a channel with federal investigators. And Park Dae-ho. Silence. Junseo. I knew something was moving, he said finally. The words came out with the specific heaviness of something admitted rather than confessed. I had intelligence suggesting internal misalignment. I thought I had it under control. He paused. I thought I had more time. Nia looked out at the river. Your invitation, she said. The name on it. Park Soo-yeon. She heard the air change beside her. I chose that name at random, he said. Standard family name. Common. Park Dae-ho's daughter is named Soo-yeon, Nia said. The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. Heavier. That's not possible, he said. My team generated the invitation materials. No one on my team would... He stopped himself. His voice shifted, flatter, more controlled, The way a voice goes when the mind is working too fast underneath it. Someone on my team would. Nia said nothing. She let him get there. The invitation wasn't random, he said slowly. Someone chose that name. Someone inside my organization who knew that name and knew it would mean something, or knew it would eventually connect to something. A signal, Nia said, or a message. Or a warning, he said, depending on who sent it and what they wanted me to see. They sat on the bench above the Han River while the city moved below them, and Nia felt the full weight of the situation settle around them both. The investigation, the internal faction, the fake wedding that had been either the most elaborate act of devotion she'd ever witnessed, or the surface of something she still didn't have a full picture of. I need to go back to the estate, he said. I know. I need to find out who on my team placed that name. I know. He turned to her. Come with me. Nia looked at him. I know what I'm asking, he said. I know it's a lot. Yes. Junso, I'm a trauma nurse from Chicago. I'm not... You're the only person I know who isn't compromised, he said. His voice was stripped of everything except the directness of someone who has no moves left except the honest one. Every person in my organization right now is either loyal to me or loyal to Park, or in some position between those two things that I can't currently map. My security team, I don't know who passed that name. I don't know how deep it goes. He held her gaze. You walked in from outside. You have no stake in this, and I trust you. You don't trust many people. I trust you, he said. That's not something I say easily. Nia stood up from the bench. She moved to the railing at the edge of the path and looked out at the river for a moment, her hands on the cold metal. 7 years ago, she'd walked away from him in a public room full of people who were watching, and she'd been so certain she was right, and she'd built a whole life on that certainty, on the foundation of it, on the necessary anger of it. The foundation was rotten. But what grew out of rotten foundations wasn't nothing. It was still her life. It was still the choices she'd made and the woman she'd become inside them. And now she was standing in a park above the Han River being asked to walk back into the world she'd walked out of, not because it was safe or simple or clean, but because the man on that bench was the one person who had tried for 7 years to find his way back to her. And he was now sitting in the middle of something that was going to close around him fast if no one helped him see the shape of it. She turned around. I have conditions, she said. He looked at her, waiting. I'm not an operative. I'm not a courier. I'm not a weapon in whatever this becomes. I'm a person who happens to know something useful, and I'm offering that, not myself as a tool. Understood. If at any point I feel unsafe, you leave immediately, no questions. And you tell me the truth, she said. About everything, even the things you'd rather I didn't know. He held her gaze. Yes. She walked back to the bench and stood in front of him. He looked up at her, and the morning light was coming in from the east, and the city was below them, and she felt the specific gravity of a moment that was about to become a point of no return. Call your driver, she said. He reached for his phone. It rang before he touched it. He looked at the screen. Something crossed his face, fast, controlled, but she saw it. Who is it? She said. My head of security? He answered immediately, switching to Korean she couldn't fully follow. He spoke for 30 seconds. He listened for longer. When he ended the call, he was very still. What happened? Nia said. 3 of my men at the estate have been found unconscious, he said. His voice was completely flat now. The flatness of operational mode, everything else stripped out. The secure room where I keep my operational records has been accessed, and Park Dae-ho left the estate this morning. He paused. He wasn't scheduled to leave. Nia felt the air pull tight around her. He knows you know, she said, or he's ahead of schedule. Junseo stood up. Either way, we are out of time. He reached out and his hand closed around her wrist. Not forceful, just real, just present, just the specific weight of a man who needed something solid, and she was the closest solid thing. We have to go, he said. Now. And somewhere across the city, in a direction she couldn't yet identify, something had already begun that neither of them could stop from the outside. The car moved fast through Seoul traffic, and Junseo made 4 calls in 12 minutes, and Nia sat in the back seat beside him and watched him become someone she hadn't seen before. Not a different person, the same person, but with everything surface level burned off. The careful gravity she'd always known in him, the deliberate restraint, the measured pace of a man who'd learned that stillness communicated power, was gone. What was underneath it was faster and colder and entirely focused, the way a blade is focused, without personality, without consideration for anything that wasn't the immediate problem. He spoke in Korean. She caught fragments, names, locations, words she knew from context. He didn't translate for her in real time, and she didn't ask him to. She watched his face instead, reading what the language didn't give her. His jaw was set. His eyes moved to the window and back to his phone, and back to the window in a pattern that wasn't anxiety, but was something adjacent to it. The restless calculation of someone running scenarios and not liking the outcomes. The fourth call was shorter than the others. When he ended it, he sat very still for a moment. "Tell me," Naya said. "The secure room wasn't just accessed," he said. "It was copied. Someone with the access codes went in, duplicated the operational files on the server, and walked out. The three men found unconscious were the overnight security rotation." He paused. "The rotation I personally assigned. So whoever did it knew who you'd assign." "Yes." "That's someone close." "Yes," he said again. The word came out with a specific quality. Not anger yet, but the pressure that precedes it. "How many people knew that rotation?" "4. He looked at her. "Myself. My head of security, Woo Jin, my personal aide, Choi Sung Min, and my second operational lieutenant, Han Byung Jae. And Park Dae-ho. Park isn't in that chain." His voice was flat. "Which means he had someone in that chain." Nia looked out the window at the city moving past. They were on the highway south now, the urban density beginning to thin at the edges. "What was in those files?" "Everything," he said. The word landed without drama, which made it heavier. Active routes, asset locations, the names of every legitimate business partner who has a functional connection to the organization, the financial architecture. He stopped. If those files reach the wrong hands, it burns the whole structure, the legitimate face of it. The 30 years my father spent building something that could survive in the open, yes, it's gone. Nia processed that. She was good at processing bad information quickly. It was the skill that made her effective in the trauma bay, and the skill that was keeping her functional right now, when every instinct she had was suggesting that she should be anywhere on Earth, except this car headed south toward an estate where 3 men had been knocked unconscious by someone who worked for the man beside her. "Woo Jin," she said. "Your head of security. Where is he now?" Junseo's expression shifted, just slightly. "At the estate. He was the one who called me." "He called you to report the breach?" "Yes." "And he was one of 4 people who knew the security rotation." A silence. "Yes," Junseo said. "I'm not saying it was him. I know what you're saying. I'm saying you can't rule it out." His jaw was very tight. "I know." The estate looked different in daylight, with the ceremony decorations still in place. The white flowers browning slightly at the edges now. The fabric panels on the terrace railings catching the coastal wind. The whole elaborate staging of a fake wedding looking in the morning light exactly like what it was. A construction. Something built to create an impression that the underlying reality didn't support. There were more security men visible now, 6 that Nia counted on the approach, at least 2 more at the main entrance. They'd been called in. The grounds had the particular tension of a location that had shifted from ceremony mode to something harder. Woo Jin met them at the entrance. He was a compact man in his 40s, broad through the shoulders, with a face that had been in enough difficult situations to have stopped reacting visibly to them. He spoke to Junseo in rapid Korean, walking them inside and through the main corridor toward the back of the house. Nia kept pace. Nobody suggested she stay behind, and she wasn't going to volunteer it. The secure room was on the lower level. Reinforced door, electronic lock, the kind of setup that communicated serious without being ostentatious. The door was standing open now. 2 men were inside doing something with the server hardware. The room itself was small and functional. A desk, a server rack, a monitor, filing cabinets with physical locks that were all intact. Only the digital files had been touched. Junseo stood in the doorway and looked at the room for a long moment. Then he turned to Wu Jin and said something short and direct. Wu Jin answered. They went back and forth twice. Then Junseo said in English, "Tell me exactly what time you discovered the breach." Wu Jin looked at him. "I already told you. Tell me again." A pause. 5:47 this morning. My overnight man didn't check in at 5:30. I went to find him. He was in the East Corridor, unconscious. And you called me at 7:12. I needed to verify. You needed an hour and 25 minutes to verify that 3 men were unconscious and the secure room had been accessed. Wu Jin's expression didn't change. I was managing the situation. I wanted complete information before I called you. That's not protocol, Junseo said. His voice had gone completely quiet, which Nia recognized as more dangerous than volume. I made a judgment call. You made a judgment call not to tell me for 90 minutes that my secure files had been copied. Stop! Junseo said it without raising his voice, and Wu Jin stopped. Go to the main hall. Wait for me there. Don't communicate with anyone until I come to you. Wu Jin held his gaze for 2 seconds. Then he nodded and left. When he was gone, Junseo stood in the doorway of the empty, secure room and was very still. You think it was him? Nia said quietly. I think the timing is wrong. He turned from the room. An hour and 25 minutes. If you discovered this at 5:47, you call immediately. You don't verify. You don't manage anything. You call. He paused. Unless you need that time for something else. Like making sure Park Dae-ho was already gone before you reported it. Yes. Nia looked at the server room. Can you find out what was copied? Is there a log? My tech people are pulling it now. He moved away from the door. Come with me. They went upstairs to a room she hadn't been in. A study on the second floor, bookshelves, a large desk, windows facing the sea. He sat behind the desk and pulled open a laptop. She sat across from him and watched him work. He was fast with it, comfortable with the technical side in a way she hadn't expected, navigating screens she couldn't read. Here, he said, and turned the laptop toward her. She looked at the log. She couldn't read the Korean file names, but she could read timestamps. The access had started at 4:23 in the morning. Multiple files transferred. The session had closed at 4:51. Your man found the breach at 5:47, she said. Yes. The access started at 4:23. She looked at him. An hour and 24 minutes between the session closing and discovery. Consistent with someone who needed to create distance before the alarm was raised. And Wu Jin's call to you was at 7:12. She looked at the timestamp again. 2 hours and 21 minutes after the access closed. 1 hour and 25 minutes after discovery. She sat back. That's 2 separate windows of time where he sat on information. Junseo's expression had settled into something she didn't have a word for. Not rage, something past the heat of rage, something that was what remains after the heat has done its work and left a structural change behind. His phone buzzed on the desk. He looked at it, read something. His face didn't move. What? Nia said. He turned the phone toward her. It was a message from an unsaved number. In English, which was deliberate. It was for her benefit as much as his. The files are already transferred. You have 6 hours before they go to people who will end what your father built. Unless you step down publicly and transfer operational control to the designated successor, everything burns. There will be no second offer. Nia read it twice. P, she said. Park. He took the phone back. He's not being subtle. He's past subtle. He's past needing to be subtle. She leaned forward. Junseo, if he already has the files and he's willing to send this message from a traceable enough channel that you can read it, he's not afraid of you anymore. No. That means he has something else, not just the files. Junseo looked at her. The files are leverage, she said, but you could rebuild from files. It would hurt, but you could do it. He has to know that, which means he has something that can't be rebuilt from. She held his gaze. What can't you come back from? He was quiet for 3 seconds. People, he said. The people who run the legitimate side. The business partners. The attorneys. The contacts in the port authorities across 6 countries. He paused. If he identifies them publicly, if those names go to press or to law enforcement, those people's lives are destroyed. their careers, their families. His voice stayed even with effort. Some of them don't know the full picture of what they're connected to. They took legitimate contracts. They don't deserve what that exposure would do to them. Nia understood. The files weren't the weapon. The people named in the files were. How many people? 40, maybe 50 individuals across 4 countries. And Park would expose all of them. Without hesitation, Junso said. He'd burn 50 people to get control of what's left. Nia sat with that weight. It was a specific kind of weight, the kind that comes from understanding that the scale of a situation has expanded past the personal. This wasn't just about Junseo anymore. It wasn't about the organization or the investigation or even the fractured structure of a criminal empire in transition. It was about 50 civilians who had no idea that their lives were currently being used as chips in someone else's game. You can't step down, she said. No. If you do, Park gets everything and those people get exposed anyway once he decides they're inconvenient. Yes. So what's the play? He didn't answer immediately. He stood up from the desk and went to the window. The same instinct she'd noticed in him before, the movement toward a horizon when the room got too small. He stood with his back to her and looked at the sea. There's a man, he said, in my network. Kim Tae-woo. He manages the data security architecture, both sides, legitimate and operational. If anyone can tell me where Park's copy of those files is stored, it's him. And if we can find the storage point before the 6-hour window closes, you can delete it, or compromise it enough that it's useless. Where's Kim Tae-woo? Seoul. He turned from the window. But I need to reach him without going through any channel that Woo Jin or anyone else in the estate has access to. Use my phone, Nia said. He looked at her. He doesn't know my number. It's not in your system. If Woo Jin is monitoring outgoing communications from your devices, he is, Junso said. Standard security protocol. All organization-linked devices. Then use mine. She held it out. He took it. He held it for a moment, looking at it, and something crossed his face that was harder to name than the operational calculations. Something that was about the fact that a woman he'd spent 7 years trying to reach was sitting in a room with him handing over her phone in the middle of a crisis. And there was no version of that moment that didn't mean something. He dialed. The call was brief. Kim Tae-woo answered. She could hear the voice, careful and awake, clearly not surprised to be called on an unknown number. Junseo spoke in Korean for 2 minutes, then listened for longer. When he hung up, his expression was controlled and wrong in the specific way of someone absorbing information that changes the shape of everything. What? Nia said. The files are on a server in Busan, he said. Kim Tae-woo traced the transfer signature. He knows the address. That's good. The server is registered to a shell company. He paused. A shell company that my legal team set up 14 months ago. Nia felt the floor shift. It's yours, she said. It's registered in my name, he said. The shell company, the server, the address. If law enforcement traces those files, they trace directly to me, not to Park. He set her phone on the desk. His hand was steady. He didn't just steal the files, he created a structure that makes it look like I was preparing to distribute them myself. The room was very quiet. He's framing you, Nia said. He's been building the frame for 14 months. Junso's voice was flat and precise. The shell company, the server, whatever documentation he's created to show a chain of custody pointing to me. By the time the 6 hours are up, if I don't step down, he releases everything and the frame goes with it. He looked at her. It won't just destroy the organization. I'll be arrested in South Korea and in the United States. Nia stood up from the chair. She needed to be on her feet for this. She crossed to the window beside him and stood there, looking at the same gray sea. The wind was moving the surface into small, choppy swells. The sky above the horizon had gone the color of old pewter. Agent Kim, she said. No. Junso, if I go to federal investigators right now, I hand Park exactly what he wants. I become the person who walked into an FBI office and confirmed that the files exist and that I was in possession of sensitive... You're being framed, she said. That changes the calculus. Not fast enough. He turned from the window. 6 hours, Nia. A federal investigation takes months. A counter-narrative takes weeks. I have 6 hours before Park releases everything and 50 people's lives get destroyed along with mine. She turned to look at him. His face was stripped down to the bone of it now. No performance, no reserve, nothing managed. Just the full weight of a man standing in the center of a structure that was collapsing and looking at her with the particular expression of someone who has run out of options in the specific direction they'd been running and knows it. Then we need Kim Tae-woo, she said. In person, now. He's in Seoul. It's 4 hours. It's 4 hours if we drive. She picked her phone up from the desk. You said he manages data security for both sides. Can he access that server remotely and do something to the files? He can corrupt the transfer architecture, render the files unreadable if he can get into the server's own system. He paused. But Park will have his own tech people monitoring the server. The moment Kim starts working on it, they'll know. How long does he need? To corrupt the files completely? 40 minutes, maybe 50. And how long before they can physically stop him? Junseo's eyes moved, calculating. If Park's people are in Busan, 40 minutes to an hour, depending on where they are in the city. So you need Kim Tae-woo to start working at the exact moment you create a reason for Park's people to be somewhere else. A silence. A diversion, he said. Not a diversion, she said. A negotiation. You call Park. You tell him you're ready to discuss terms. You ask for a meeting. She held his gaze. He wants you in a room. He's been building toward that for 18 months. He'll take the meeting. And while he's taking the meeting, Kim Tae-woo works. Junseo looked at her for a long moment. She could see him running it. The angles, the dependencies, the points of failure. He had the specific kind of mind that didn't commit to a plan until it had found the holes in it, and she waited while he found them. There are two problems, he said. The first is that if Park agrees to a meeting, he'll want it fast and on his terms, which means his tech people might stay on the server regardless. Then we need to know where his tech people are. The second problem, he continued, is that I don't have Woo Jin anymore. I can't coordinate what I need to coordinate without a head of security I trust. He paused. And I don't know who else in this building is compromised. So you operate with the people you know are clean. I know 2 people in this building are clean, he said. Myself. And you. Nia looked at him. I know that's not... I know what I'm asking, he said. I know you came here for a conversation about 7 years ago, and I've put you in the middle of something that has nothing to do with... Stop apologizing, she said. We don't have time for it. She turned from the window and picked up her jacket from the back of the chair. Call Kim Tae-woo back. Tell him to get to Busan, not Seoul. He needs to be within physical access of that server in case the remote approach fails. She zipped her jacket. Then call Park. Tell him you want to talk. Buy us time. And what are you doing? I'm going to have a conversation with Woo Jin, she said. Junseo went very still. Nia, I'm a civilian, she said. He has no reason to be defensive with me. And people who think they've won get comfortable. She held his gaze. I need 10 minutes with him before you call Park. I need to know if he knows where Park's tech team is operating from. He won't tell you. People tell nurses things, she said. We have a face they trust. We're trained to be non-threatening, and we ask questions sideways. She moved toward the door. 10 minutes. Then you make the calls. She didn't wait for him to agree. She went into the corridor and found Woo Jin, where Junseo had sent him. The main hall, seated in a chair near the entrance, his phone face down on his knee, his expression professionally neutral. He looked up when she came in. Ms. Brooks, he said. Polite? Watchful. I'm sorry to bother you, she said. She kept her voice easy, the specific register she used with patients who were scared and needed to believe everything was under control. This is all very overwhelming. I'm not part of any of this normally. I'm just trying to understand what's happening. He looked at her, assessing. Mr. Kang will address the situation, I'm sure. She sat down in a nearby chair. Not too close, non-threatening geometry. Can I ask you something? As someone who doesn't know this world. A slight pause. You can ask? The man, Park Dae-ho. She said the name carefully, like someone who'd only recently heard it. Is he dangerous, like physically dangerous, or just... He's a businessman, Woo Jin said. Smooth, practiced. Right. She nodded slowly. It's just the men who were found unconscious this morning. That doesn't happen in a business dispute, does it? His expression shifted very slightly. recalibrating. These things are complex. I'm sure. She looked at her hands. I guess I'm wondering if I should be scared. If whoever did that is close, like in the city. She looked up at him with the specific earnestness of someone who didn't know they were asking the right question. Are they still nearby? Should I be thinking about leaving? Wu Jin looked at her for 3 seconds. Then he said carefully, I wouldn't worry about the city. The people involved in this morning are elsewhere. Elsewhere, she repeated. Like, not Seoul? I wouldn't worry, he said again. And something moved in his eyes. The flicker of someone who had said more than they'd meant to and was now closing back down. But she had it. Not Seoul. Which meant Park's tech team, the people monitoring the server, were either in Busan or somewhere between the two cities. Which meant Kim Tae-woo, working remotely from Seoul, might have a window that was longer than they'd calculated. Park's people weren't watching locally. They were watching from a distance. She stood up. Thank you. I'll let you wait. I'm sorry to have bothered you. She walked back toward the stairs at a pace that didn't rush. When she got back to the study and closed the door, Junseo looked up from the laptop. She gave him the information in 30 seconds. He processed it in 10. If they're in Busan, Kim has more time, he said. Make the calls, she said. He reached for his phone. It rang before he touched it. A different number this time. He looked at the screen and something changed in his face. Something she couldn't read. Something new. He answered. He listened for 11 seconds. His face went completely still. He said 2 words in Korean that she didn't know. He ended the call. What is it? Nia said. He set the phone on the desk. He looked at her with the expression of a man who has just been told something that has destroyed not just his plan, but his understanding of the ground beneath his feet. That was Kim Tae-woo, he said. He traced the shell company further than the server. He stopped. The shell company wasn't set up 14 months ago. When was it set up? 3 years ago, he said. And the authorization signature... He stopped again. Whose signature is it? Nia said. Junso looked at her. It's mine, he said. My actual signature. Not forged. Not replicated. He looked at his own hands on the desk. I signed the authorization for that shell company 3 years ago. I have no memory of it, but the document is real. He looked up at her. Someone put something in front of me 3 years ago that I signed without knowing what it was. Someone in my innermost circle. Someone who had access to my desk and my documents and my... The silence in the study lasted approximately 4 seconds. Then Nia said, Who had access to your desk 3 years ago? Junseo's jaw was tight enough that she could see the muscle working at the corner of it. He was staring at his own hands on the desk surface, looking at them the way you look at something that has betrayed you by existing. My senior circle. 5 people at that time. Woo Jin, Han Byung-jae, my personal aide Choi Sung-min. He stopped. My father's former attorney, Lim Dae-won. He was transitioning out of the role when I took over. And the 5th? He didn't answer immediately. Junseo. Serena Vaughn, he said. The name dropped into the room like something thrown hard at a stone floor. Nia felt it land in her chest before her brain fully processed it. Serena was inside your organization. She worked as a cultural liaison for 2 years after you left. His voice was controlled and wrong. She positioned herself as a bridge between the Korean and American operational sides. She was good at it. She had the languages and the connections. He paused. I kept her at arm's length after I found out what she'd done to us, but I couldn't. I didn't have proof then, not the kind I could use, and removing her without cause would have created friction at a sensitive time. So she stayed. For 14 months after I found out, I was managing her exit carefully. He stood up from the desk. He couldn't be still anymore. She left the organization 3 years ago. I thought it was clean. I thought I'd controlled the damage. She left 3 years ago, Nia said. The shell company was authorized 3 years ago. He stopped moving. Her exit gift, Nia said. She didn't just leave. She built the frame on her way out and handed it to Park. The study felt smaller than it had 60 seconds ago. The walls were the same distance apart, but the air between them had compressed. Junseo stood near the bookshelf with his back to it, and his hands at his sides and his face doing something she'd never seen it do, losing its architecture. the control cracking at the foundation, not breaking but fracturing in the specific way of something that has held too much for too long. 3 years, he said. She spent 3 years in my organization, had access to my desk, my documents, my organizational structure, and she used all of it. His voice was very quiet. And I handed her that access because I was trying to be careful about how I removed her. She counted on careful, Nia said. Careful is what she built the whole thing on. He looked at her. Something raw in his face that she hadn't seen before. Not grief exactly, not rage exactly. The specific pain of someone who understands that they have been systematically and patiently destroyed by someone they underestimated, and that the underestimation was the mechanism. His phone buzzed on the desk. He crossed to it, read the screen. Park, he's calling. Answer it, Nia said. By the time. I'll call Kim Tae-woo. Tell him to start on the server now. Don't wait. Jun-seo picked up the phone. Answered. His voice shifted into something completely flat and operational the moment the call connected. Nia grabbed her own phone and dialed the number Jun-seo had called earlier. Kim Tae-woo picked up on the first ring. Ms. Brooks, he said. His English was precise, careful. He'd expected her. Start now, she said. Don't wait for the meeting. Park's technical team is in Busan, not Seoul. You have a window. A brief silence. How confident are you in that assessment? 80%. That's not... It's the best you're going to get in the next 30 seconds. Start working or don't. Another pause, then, starting now. I'll need 40 minutes minimum. You have less than that if Park figures out what's happening. She lowered her voice, even though Jun-seo was on the other side of the room. What do you need from this end? Keep Park on the phone, Kim said. Every minute he's talking is a minute his people aren't watching the server traffic. Working on it, she said. Call this number if anything changes. She ended the call and looked across the room at Jun-seo. He was standing with the phone at his ear and his free hand pressed flat against the bookshelf behind him. The physical anchor of someone who needs one thing solid while everything else moves. He was speaking Korean, measured and slow, and she couldn't follow the content, but she could read the pace, deliberate, drawing it out, giving Park the impression of a man considering his options carefully. She crossed to the desk and opened the laptop. She pulled up what she could, the financial documents Jun-seo had been looking at before, the timestamp log from the server access. She started building a timeline in her head the way she built differential diagnoses in the trauma bay. What happened when, what caused what the sequence of events implied about the mechanism. Serena had left the organization 3 years ago. She'd taken the shell company authorization with her, or left it in place, already set up, a trap with a long fuse. Park Dae-ho had known about it long enough to build toward this moment, which meant Serena and Park had been in contact for at least 3 years, maybe longer. The lie that had separated her and Jun-seo 7 years ago. The 2 years Serena spent inside the organization afterward, building access and trust. The shell company 3 years ago. The 18 months of internal positioning. The fake wedding that had brought Nia here. Park choosing this moment, this event, as the coordination point. It was too neat. She sat very still with that thought. The fake wedding had brought her here. But who had the wedding brought besides her? Who had it gathered under the cover of ceremony preparation who wouldn't normally have been in the same location at the same time? She looked up at Jun-seo. He was still on the phone. She waited. 2 minutes. 3. He spoke, listened, spoke again. Then he said something short and ended the call. He lowered the phone and stood for a moment without turning around. What did he say? Nia asked. He wants a meeting in person. He turned. In Busan, 2 hours. You can't go to Busan. I know. If you're in Busan, you're in his territory, and Kim Tae-woo is in the same city. I know, he said again. I told him I needed time to arrange secure transport. I have 40 minutes before he expects a confirmation. Kim needs 40 minutes minimum. If you confirm and then don't show, he'll know something is wrong. He crossed to the desk and stood across from her. I need to delay the confirmation without tipping him. Tell him there's a complication with transport, she said. Tell him your head of security is unavailable. She paused. Which is true. Something shifted in his face, the grim acknowledgement of someone who has accepted an ugly truth and is now using it. Where is Woo Jin? Still in the main hall. He needs to be somewhere he can't communicate. He moved toward the door. Wait. Nia put her hand out, not grabbing him, just putting herself in the space. He stopped. If you move on Wu Jin now, Park will know within minutes. Wu Jin has a way to signal him. Everyone in that position has a dead man's switch. He looked at her. She could see him thinking through it, testing it, finding that she was right. So we leave him where he is. We leave him where he is, she said, and you let him think everything is still developing normally. No sudden moves. She held his gaze. The moment Park's files are corrupted, Wu Jin is irrelevant. Park has nothing to offer him. Junseo studied her for a moment. You think like this naturally? Emergency medicine, she said. You learn to manage the room. He almost let something through that would have been a different moment. But the phone on the desk buzzed again. Different number. He looked at it, and his expression changed immediately. Han Byung-jae, he said, his second operational lieutenant, the fourth name from the list of people who'd known the security rotation. He answered. The call was short, 30 seconds, mostly listening. When he ended it, his face had changed again, and not in a direction that was better. Han is downstairs, he said. He just arrived from Seoul. He says he has information about Park that I need to hear in person. He paused. He says he's been working a separate angle for 3 weeks, and he couldn't tell me until he was sure. Nia looked at him. Is that credible? Han has done that before. He runs his own threads sometimes. He's effective. He paused. He's also one of 4 people who knew the security rotation. So he's either the second person Park has inside, or he's been running something genuine and the timing is coincidental. Or, Junseo said, he's being sent up by Park to manage me in person while the window closes. Nia's jaw tightened. How long has Kim Tae-woo been working? He checked the time. 11 minutes. 29 minutes left, minimum. Meet with Han, she said. Here, in this room. I stay in the room. Nia, I'm a civilian. I'm nobody to him. People don't perform for the audience they discount. She held her ground. If he's clean, we need what he knows. If he's not, I need to see how he operates. He looked at her for one long second. Then he nodded and went to the door and said something to the man outside it. Han Byung-jae was taller than she'd expected, lean, mid-40s, with the particular energy of someone who moves fast and thinks faster. He came into the room and stopped when he saw Nia, registering her with a quick assessment that was professional and not hostile. Ms. Brooks, he said. He knew who she was. Of course he did. I heard you were here. She stays, Junseo said. Not a question. Han looked at him for a beat. Then he moved to the chair across from the desk and sat down without being asked, which was either confidence or dominance posturing. Nia wasn't sure yet. 3 weeks ago, I started getting irregularities in the Port Incheon accounts, Han said. His English was accented but clean. He was talking to Junseo, but he was aware of her. She could feel the awareness without his eyes moving to her. Small transfers, amounts below the monitoring threshold. Consistent pattern, someone who knew the threshold. Park, Junseo said. No, Han said. Someone inside. The transfers were going out, but the originating accounts were ones only accessible from inside the estate's financial system. He paused. The estate system that Wu Jin manages. Wu Jin? Nia said. Han looked at her directly for the first time. You already knew. We knew about Wu Jin, she said. We didn't know about Incheon. How much? Junseo said. 3.4 million over 18 months, Han's voice was flat. Not enough to be visible individually. Enough to matter in aggregate. He leaned forward. It's not the money. The money is nothing. It's the account structure. Those accounts connect to 4 legitimate business partners. The transfers create a paper trail suggesting those partners were receiving payments for non-existent services. Nia closed her eyes briefly, opened them. More framing. A parallel frame, Han said. He was looking at Junseo now, direct, unblinking. The shell company gives them you. The Incheon transfers give them 4 of your most credible legitimate partners. And together it looks like an organized structure of financial crime that touches every layer, Junseo said. His voice was completely without emotion now, which meant it was carrying more than it could hold. The organization, the leadership, the legitimate face, all of it. Yes, the room was quiet for 3 seconds. Why didn't you come to me 3 weeks ago? Junseo said. Han's jaw shifted. Because I didn't know if I could trust the channel. Wu Jin manages my secure communications with you. If I'd used any standard channel, he'd have known you were onto him. And I'd have ended up like the 3 men in the East Corridor this morning. Han held his gaze. I wasn't ready to move until I had enough to make it worth the risk. Nia watched Junseo decide whether to believe it. She watched him look at Han the way you look at a map that might be accurate or might lead you off a cliff, wanting to use it, not certain you can. She understood the calculus. She'd been doing the same calculus about everyone in this building since she arrived. Her phone buzzed on the desk. Kim Tae-woo. She answered immediately. Talk to me. I'm in the server. His voice was controlled but tight. The files are accessible. I can begin corruption in 90 seconds. A pause. But there's a problem. What problem? The server has a secondary protection I didn't anticipate. A manual verification requirement, just someone has to physically confirm the deletion from inside the Busan location. I can initiate remotely, but I cannot complete it without a physical confirmation at the server's terminal. Nia looked at Junseo across the desk. Someone has to be in Busan. At the terminal, yes. Kim paused. Within 20 minutes of when I begin, or the initiation expires and the server locks me out permanently. Where exactly in Busan? Kim gave her an address. She wrote it on her hand. She ended the call and looked up. Both men were watching her. Someone needs to be at a server terminal in Busan in under 20 minutes, she said. She turned to Han. Do you have a fast car? Han looked at her, then at Junseo. I have a motorcycle. That's faster, she said. Nia. Junseo's voice was sharp. You're not. I'm the only person in this building who Park's network doesn't know, she said. You send Han, and if Park has anyone watching that location, they know Han. They know what he looks like and what he drives and why he'd be in Busan. She held Junseo's gaze. They don't know me. I'm a trauma nurse from Chicago who made a confused and highly publicized appearance at a fake wedding. That's exactly why you can't. I can do this. Her voice was steady. She needed it to be steady because if it wasn't, he wouldn't let her go. And if he didn't let her go, 25 people's lives would get destroyed before the end of the afternoon. Tell me what I do at the terminal. Make it simple. The silence in the room was about 4 seconds long and contained inside it about 7 years of everything unresolved between them crashing up against the reality of right now. One screen, Junseo said. His voice was rough. One confirmation keystroke. Kim will guide you through it remotely. He stopped. It's in a commercial building. Public access floor. You walk in like you belong there. I can do that. He crossed around the desk in 3 steps. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to look up slightly to hold his gaze. His hands came up and he held her face, both palms, careful, not restraining, just present. And he looked at her with the specific expression of a man who had spent 7 years losing things and was not going to hide what it cost him to let her walk towards something dangerous. The second it's done, he said, you walk out, you don't stop, you don't engage with anyone. I know, she said. Call me from inside the building before you touch anything. I know. Nia. I know, she said for the 3rd time, and she held his gaze until he let go. Han's motorcycle was in the east lot. It was fast and low and not built for comfort, and she didn't care about any of that. She pulled on the spare helmet and got on behind Han and held on as he moved through the estate gates and hit the coast road south. The road to Busan in the afternoon was 2 lanes and coastal and terrifyingly fast on a motorcycle. The sea was on her left and the wind was full in her face despite the helmet, and her hands were locked around Han's jacket, and she was counting minutes in her head like a metronome. 17 minutes. The address on her hand. A commercial district in northern Busan. Tech companies, IT infrastructure services, the kind of anonymous mid-rise building that housed server rooms and small offices behind unremarkable glass facades. She called Kim Tae-woo at 12 minutes out. I'm 7 blocks away, she said. The wind was loud. She had to press the phone hard against her ear under the helmet. I'm ready to initiate, he said. When you're at the terminal, you'll see a command prompt. Type exactly what I give you. One keystroke confirmation. That's it. What does the terminal look like? A workstation in a server room. There's a key card reader on the door. The key card is... He hesitated. It's an issue. I can spoof the card remotely, but I need 30 seconds of proximity to the reader. So I hold my phone to the reader. Yes, it's unconventional. So is everything today, she said. Han pulled up outside the building at 14 minutes. She was off the bike before it fully stopped. She pulled off the helmet and handed it back, and she looked at Han, and he looked at her, and there was a brief, wordless communication between two people who were on the same side of something without having planned to be. I'll be outside, he said. She went in. The lobby was exactly what it was designed to be. Forgettable. Security desk to the left, unmanned at this hour of the afternoon. Directory board. Elevators. She checked the address on her hand. 6th floor. She took the stairs. The 6th floor was a corridor of frosted glass offices and one unmarked steel door at the far end. Server room. She walked toward it at a pace that was purposeful but not hurried. The walk of someone who belonged there, had been there before, would be there again. The card reader was a flat panel beside the steel door. She held her phone to it and said, into the speaker, Kim. 30 seconds, he said. She stood in the corridor and held her phone flat against the reader and counted heartbeats. 41. 42. Her heart was loud in her own ears. The hallway was empty, fluorescent light, the smell of climate-controlled air. A click. The door released. The server room was cold and loud with the particular white noise of cooling systems and running hardware. Rows of black server racks, blue and green indicator lights. At the far end, a workstation desk with a monitor displaying a command prompt. She was there in 8 steps. I'm at the terminal, she said. Type exactly this, Kim said, and gave her a string of characters. She typed them carefully, checking each one. Her fingers were cold from the motorcycle. She hit each key with deliberate precision. Now press enter and then type Y and enter again, Kim said. She did. The screen went dark for 3 seconds. Then a line of text appeared. Process initiated. Completion in 90 seconds. It's working, she said. Don't leave until the confirmation appears, Kim said. It will say transfer disabled. If you leave before that, I'm not leaving, she said. She stood in front of the terminal and watched the screen and breathed. 90 seconds. She counted them. The server room was cold and loud and completely sealed, and she was a trauma nurse from Chicago standing in a South Korean server room watching a progress indicator move across a screen while somewhere across the city, a man she had spent 7 years trying to stop loving was holding his organization together with the knowledge that she was here doing this. And the weight of all of it was enormous and present and completely beside the point right now. The screen changed. Transfer disabled. All target files corrupted. Restoration not possible. She exhaled, called Kim. It's done. Confirmed on my end, he said, and she could hear something in his voice that might have been relief. The files are gone. Park can't release what he doesn't have. She called Jun-seo. He answered before the first ring completed. Tell me. It's done, she said. The files are corrupted. Kim has confirmed. A silence on the line that was brief and dense. Are you safe? He said. I'm fine. I'm walking out now. Han is outside. I know. She moved toward the server room door. What about Park? A pause. His window just closed. He'll know soon if he doesn't already. His voice shifted. He's going to... The door to the server room opened from the outside before she reached it. 2 men came through the door. Neither of them were Han. They were both large and both moving fast, and one of them already had his phone to his ear and was speaking in rapid Korean that she didn't need to translate because the situation was self-translating. Jun-seo, she said into the phone. She kept her voice completely level. There are 2 people in the room with me. She heard him go very still on the line. I need you to listen, the closer of the 2 men said. His English was flat and deliberate. Put the phone down. She looked at him. Put the phone down, he said again. And you don't get hurt. Keep it, and we have a different conversation. Her heart was doing something loud and rhythmic in her chest, and she was aware of the server room behind her and the 2 men in front of her, and the weight of the phone in her hand and Junseo on the other end of it, listening, and she made a decision in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Not a panicked decision, not a frozen decision, but the specific type of clinical decision she made when the room was in chaos and someone needed her to be the still point. She put the phone in her jacket pocket without ending the call, and looked at the man in front of her and said, "What do you want?" He smiled. It didn't reach anything behind his eyes. "We want a conversation about what you just deleted." She held his gaze. The phone was in her pocket, live, and Junso was listening to every word. And somewhere outside this building, Han was on a motorcycle. And somewhere across the city, the man who had built a fake wedding to reach her was now receiving in real time the audio of the situation she was standing in, and she needed him to hear enough to act without hearing enough to panic. And the only way to manage that was to keep talking. That was the only directive that mattered. Keep talking and keep them focused on her voice and not on the phone in her pocket, and not on whatever was happening outside this building where Han was on a motorcycle and Junseo was on a live line listening to everything. "I deleted a file," she said. Her voice came out steady. She was grateful for that. "I'm a nurse from Chicago. I don't know what was in it." The closer man, broader through the chest, a scar along his left jaw that had healed badly, took one step toward her. "You know exactly what was in it." "I was asked to press a key," she said. "I pressed a key? I don't read Korean." He stopped, looked at her with the specific assessment of someone deciding whether a person is useful or not. Behind him, the second man had moved to the workstation and was doing something with the terminal. She didn't look directly at him, kept her eyes on the first man, kept the geometry of the room in her peripheral vision. "Who sent you?" Scarjaw said. "A man who asked me for a favor." She let a beat pass. "I'm here as a personal guest. I don't have organizational standing. If you're looking for leverage, we know who you are," he said. "We know exactly why you're here." He took another step. "And we know that what you just deleted was worth considerably more than your personal guest status." "Then you also know," she said, "that the man who brought me here is currently listening to this conversation." She watched that land. A flicker behind his eyes, not fear, calculation. He glanced at the second man. A wordless exchange. Then he looked back at her. "Give me the phone," he said. "No," she said. The word came out flat and complete, the way she said no in the trauma bay when a patient was about to do something that would hurt them. Not angry, not frightened, just a closed door. He blinked. People weren't used to know from a woman standing in a server room with two large men between her and the exit. The unexpectedness of it bought her 3 seconds. The door behind the two men exploded inward. Han came through it at speed, not running exactly, moving the way trained people move when they need to cover distance and create chaos simultaneously, which is different from running and considerably more effective. He hit the closer man with his shoulder before the man had fully registered the door moving, and they went sideways into the server rack with a sound that was metal and impact and something breaking. The second man turned from the terminal. Nia picked up the nearest thing, a keyboard from the secondary workstation, and she was moving before she decided to move, which was the thing about emergency medicine, the thing you learned after enough years of it. The body knew the sequence before the mind caught up. She brought the keyboard across the second man's forearm as he reached for something at his belt. Not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to change the trajectory of his hand. And in the half second that bought her, she moved past him toward the door. "Go." Han's voice strained from somewhere behind her. She went. The corridor outside the server room was empty. She hit the stairwell door and took the stairs at a speed she hadn't moved at since she was 22, and training for a half marathon she'd never properly finished. 6 flights. Her thighs were burning by 3. She came out into the lobby and walked. Walked, not ran, because running was visible and walking was a person who belonged there. And through the glass front doors and into the coastal Busan afternoon. She had her phone to her ear before she hit the sidewalk. "I'm out," she said. "I hear you." Junseo's voice was controlled in a way that communicated the effort of being controlled. "Han?" "Still inside. She stopped, looked back at the building. "He was handling it." "A car is 40 seconds from your location. Black sedan. Move toward the main road." She moved. The city around her was indifferent and normal. Traffic, pedestrians. The ordinary afternoon of a place that didn't know or care what had just happened in a server room on the 6th floor of a commercial building. She reached the main road, and the black sedan was already there, already moving toward her, and she got in before it had fully stopped. Han appeared at the building's entrance 90 seconds later. He was moving fast and favoring his left side, and his jacket was torn at the shoulder, and his expression was the specific blank of someone running on adrenaline who hasn't yet taken inventory of the damage. He got in the front seat. "Drive," he said. They drove. 20 minutes north of Busan, in a service stop off the main highway, Han finally took stock of his shoulder. Bruised, not separated. He rotated it twice, made a sound that acknowledged the pain without dwelling on it, and pulled his jacket back on. Nia watched him from the back seat and thought about the man in the server room whose forearm she'd hit with a keyboard and felt nothing. She wasn't ready to feel about that. "Park knows the files are gone," she said. Han looked at her in the mirror. He knew before we left the building. His people would have confirmed it the moment the terminal showed the corruption. "So what does he do now?" "That depends on what he has left." Han's voice was steady. "Without the files, he has no leverage. The frame falls apart. You can't present a frame to investigators without the evidence that supports it. He needed the files to make the story hold." He paused. "Without them, he's a man who moved against Kang Jun-seo and came up empty." "That's still a dangerous man," Nia said. "Yes," Han said, "but it's a different problem than the one we had an hour ago." She called Jun-seo. "I need to know what's happening at the estate," she said when he picked up. "Woo Jin is in custody," he said. Custody. She understood what that meant in this context and didn't press it. "I've isolated every channel he had access to. Kim Tae-woo is going through the financial architecture to map the full scope of the Incheon transfers." A pause. "Park has gone quiet. No contact since his window closed." "Quiet isn't good." "No." His voice was tight. "It means he's deciding." She looked out the car window at the highway moving past. The flat industrial landscape between Busan and the estate. The late afternoon light going orange at the edges of the sky. "He's going to run," she said, "or he's going to try to create a new problem before you can close the old one." "I know." "Which one does he do?" A silence. "Park doesn't run," Jun-seo said. "Running concedes. He doesn't concede." Another pause. "He creates the new problem." "Then you need Agent Kim," Nia said. The silence was longer. "I know," he said finally. "Not as an informant, not as cooperation, just a call. Tell her what Park is holding, what he tried to do, what you disrupted. Give her enough to move on him before he manufactures the next angle. If I open that channel, the alternative is waiting for Park to build something new and doing all of this again in 6 months," she said, "with whatever's left of your organization after the Incheon story comes out some other way." She kept her voice even, not pressing, just laying it out. "He won't stop. You know that." She heard him breathe. "One call," he said. "I talked to her directly. No attorneys, no intermediaries. That's all I'm asking." She hung up and leaned her head back against the seat and let her body feel, for the first time since the server room, what it had been carrying. Her hands were shaking slightly. She noticed them now, the fine tremor of adrenaline metabolizing, the body's invoice arriving after the fact. Her legs ached. Her throat was dry. She was somewhere on the highway between Busan and a clifftop estate in a car with a man whose shoulder she'd watched him not admit hurt, and she had just hit someone with a keyboard and watched a door get taken off its hinges, and she took stock. She was okay, functioning, present. She'd been in worse rooms with worse outcomes. The car pulled through the estate gates as the sun was getting low, throwing the white-flowered arrangements in the grounds into long shadow. The flowers had been there for 3 days now and were losing the argument with time, petals browning at the edges, some of the arrangements beginning to droop, the elaborate architecture of a fake wedding slowly dissolving back into what it actually was. Jun-seo was in the main hall when she came in. He crossed to her immediately, not running, but with the kind of purposeful speed that didn't pause for doors or other people. He stopped in front of her. His eyes moved over her the same way they had that morning in the estate entrance, checking for damage, and this time there was more to check. Her jacket was creased. There was a mark on her left hand from where she'd gripped the keyboard. Her hair was pulled out of whatever she'd tied it in at some point during the motorcycle ride. "Are you hurt?" he said. "No." He looked at her hands. The tremor was still there, faint. He saw it. "Naya, I'm fine," she said. "Adrenaline. It passes." She met his eyes. "Did you call Kim?" "I have a meeting with her in Seoul tomorrow morning." His voice was careful. "She's moving on Park tonight. She had enough from her own investigation to act, and what I gave her fills the last gaps. Woo Jin and the Incheon transfers are—" she said it was the piece she'd been missing. "And Park. He'll be in custody before morning." He paused. Her words, not mine. She seemed certain. Nia exhaled, long and slow. It moved through her whole body. The kind of exhale that carries something out of you that's been held too long. "Serena," she said. "Kim already has a flag on her. She's in the United States. Whatever arrangement she made with Park, she's going to have to account for it." His jaw tightened. "Both of them." "Good," Naya said simply. They stood in the main hall of the estate, and the silence between them was different from all the previous silences. Not heavy, not loaded, not full of 7 years of compacted damage. Just the particular quiet that settles after something has been survived. "I need to sit down," she said. They went to the room at the back of the house, the same room where he'd first told her there was no bride, where she'd stood at the window and looked at the sea and tried to find solid ground. Someone had brought food at some point and left it on the table. She sat and ate and didn't talk for several minutes, and he sat across from her and let her have that, which was still one of the things she'd always valued about him. He'd always known when silence was what a person needed. When she'd eaten enough, she set the fork down and looked at him. "The Shell Company," she said. "The document you signed." "Kim Tae-woo found the original in the archive," he said. "It was buried inside a stack of routine business filings from the transition year. 40 documents in 2 days. I was signing everything that came across my desk." He paused. "Serena managed the filing queue during that period. She was responsible for what I saw and when." She slipped it in. In a stack of legitimate filings, one document that looked exactly like the others. His voice was controlled. "I signed it in under 10 seconds. I have no memory of it because there was nothing to mark it as different." Nia looked at her hands on the table. "She built it over 7 years. From the lies she told me, to the position inside your organization, to the document, to Park." She stopped. "She played a very long game." "Yes." "Why? What did she actually get out of it?" He looked at the table. "Money, initially. Park paid her for the access, and—" He paused. "I think she genuinely hated me. After I started managing her exit. She understood what I was doing, even though I never said it directly, and she—" He stopped again. "Some people, when they understand they're being removed, they leave. And some people decide to take everything with them on the way out." Nia was quiet for a moment. "She tried to destroy you because you were removing her carefully." "Yes. That's—" She searched for the word. "That's such a human thing, such a sad human thing." He looked at her. Something in his face at that, not softness exactly, but the specific quality of someone recognizing a perspective they hadn't been able to find inside their own anger. "You're generous," he said, "given what she did to us." "I'm tired," she said. "Generous and tired feel similar at the end of a very long 2 days." He almost smiled. She saw it. The full version of the thing that had been almost something since she arrived. It lasted about 2 seconds, and then the gravity reasserted itself, but she'd seen it. "What happens now?" she said. "To the organization." He leaned back in his chair. For the first time since she'd arrived, he looked like a man who was bearing his own weight rather than managing it. "Kim wants cooperation on the Osaka connection. Structured cooperation. There are terms that need to be negotiated. In exchange, the legitimate business architecture stays intact, and the people named in the files aren't exposed." He paused. "It's not immunity. It's a path." "And you take it." "I take it," he said. "The organization my father built, the legitimate side of it, it can be real. It was always half real. It can be fully real." He looked at the window. "It's going to take years, and it means dismantling the other half, which means—" He stopped. It means a great deal of very uncomfortable decisions. But you'll make them. I'll make them, he said. They sat with that for a moment. The evening light through the window was golden now. The late horizontal light of the coast and the sea below the cliffs was a different color than it had been in the gray morning. Warmer, more complicated. I need to go home, Nia said. I know. I need to go back to Chicago and my hospital and my apartment and my actual life. She held his gaze. I need to go home and stand in it for a while and decide what I actually feel when I'm not running on adrenaline in a foreign country. Yes, he said. I'm not walking away again, she said. I need you to understand the difference. I walked away last time because I believed something that wasn't true, and I had nowhere else to put the pain of it. This is different. She held his gaze. I'm going home because I need to go home, not because I'm leaving. He looked at her with the expression of a man for whom the distinction mattered enormously. I know the difference, he said quietly. Then let me go home, she said. Let me book you a flight. I'll book my own flight. He almost smiled again. Of course. She left the next morning. He walked her to the car, the one she'd arranged herself, not his, and stood at the estate entrance while she put her bag in. The fake wedding flowers were nearly gone from the grounds now, packed up by staff, the elaborate construction being efficiently dismantled around them as though it had been stage furniture from the beginning, which it had. She stood by the open car door and looked at him in the early morning light. The soul meeting with Kim, she said. How long? The morning, maybe into the afternoon. Call me when it's done. Yes. He held her gaze. What do I say when I call? She thought about that. Tell me it went well, she said, and then ask me how I am. And mean it. I'll mean it, he said. She got in the car. She didn't look back until they were through the gates, and when she did, he was still standing at the entrance in the morning light, watching the car go, and he stayed there until the curve of the driveway took him out of sight. She flew home on a Thursday. Chicago received her the way Chicago always did, with weather, specifically the kind of dense gray overcast that felt like the city pressing its weight down from above. She took a cab from O'Hare and watched the familiar skyline come in from the northwest, and felt something in her chest that was the specific feeling of a place that belongs to you, that has your specific shape worn into it. Dominique was at her apartment when she got there. Not because she'd been told to come, she'd just shown up, the way Dominique did, and let herself in with the spare key she'd had for 6 years. There was food on the counter and coffee made, and Dominique was sitting at the kitchen table with her feet up looking at her phone, and when Naya came through the door with her bag, she looked up. You look terrible, Dominique said. Thank you, Nia said. And okay. You also look okay. Both are accurate, Naya said. She put her bag down and poured coffee and sat at the table across from her best friend and let herself be in the ordinary, specific weight of her own kitchen. The coffee was Dominique's brand, not hers. Dominique always made it too strong, which meant it was exactly what Nia needed right now. Tell me, Dominique said. She told her. All of it this time. The server room, the motorcycle, the keyboard, Han's shoulder, the files, Park, Wu Jin, Serena, the whole architecture of a 7-year scheme, and the 2 days it took to dismantle it. Dominique listened in the way she'd been doing since they were 19, with her whole body, not interrupting, not managing her reactions for Nia's comfort, just present. When Nia finished, Dominique was quiet for a moment. You hit someone with a keyboard, she said. Yes. A trauma nurse from Chicago hit someone with a keyboard in a server room in South Korea. It was the closest thing available. Dominique pressed her lips together in the specific expression that meant she was suppressing something. And Junso. Yes. What does that mean, yes? It means... Nia looked at her coffee. It means I'm here and I'm not running from it, and I don't know exactly what it looks like yet, but it's not nothing. It's very specifically not nothing. Has it ever been nothing? No, Nia said, honestly. No, it really hasn't. Then maybe stop waiting to figure out what it is, Dominique said. Maybe it's just what it's always been, which is everything, and you just haven't had a name for it that didn't scare you. Nia looked at her. You flew to South Korea on 4 words, Nia. You said that already. I'm going to keep saying it until it means something to you. She went back to work on a Monday. The trauma bay was the same as she'd left it. The particular organized chaos of a place that doesn't pause for anyone, that requires you to be fully present the moment you walk through the doors or you become a liability instead of an asset. She was grateful for it. She'd always been grateful for it, had always found the clarity of emergency medicine, say, the way it stripped everything down to the immediate, the essential, the survivable, clarifying in a way that nothing else quite was. She worked 2 full shifts and then a partial third covering for a colleague, and by Friday evening she was tired in the deep structural way that meant she'd been fully present for all of it, which was different from the exhaustion she'd carried for years, the kind that comes from keeping something at arm's length while trying to pretend you aren't. Jun-seo called on a Friday night. "The Seoul meeting went well," he said. "Good." She was on her couch in sweatpants with her feet under her and the Chicago skyline through the window going dark in the early evening. "How are you?" A pause. She could hear that he registered the return of the question she'd asked him to ask her. "Complicated," he said. "There are attorneys and terms and a great deal of paperwork designed to make the next 2 years look like a legitimate corporate restructuring." "Is it?" "It will be, eventually." Another pause. She's effective. She's not kind, but she's effective, and the terms are ones I can build something real from." And Park, in custody in Seoul, as of Wednesday. His Osaka connection has been notified through channels that the arrangement is over. His voice flattened slightly at the edges. Serena is cooperating with federal investigators in the United States. Cooperating, in her case, means trying to minimize her own exposure while giving up as little as possible. He paused. "She'll still face consequences. It won't be comfortable." "Good," Naya said. She meant it without heat. She'd spent the week metabolizing the anger into something smaller and more useful, the way you metabolize everything eventually, if you let yourself. "And Woo Jin?" "Also in custody. Han is managing the operational transition. He's—" A brief pause. "He's better at it than I expected. He was running his own threads for the right reasons." "I know," she said. "I could tell." A silence that wasn't uncomfortable. "How are you?" he said. The way she'd asked him to mean it. She looked at the skyline. "I'm good," she said. "I went back to work. I'm tired in the right way." She paused. "I've been thinking." About what I said at the estate. About going home to figure out what I felt." She turned her coffee cup on the cushion beside her. "I know what I feel. I knew it at the estate. I needed to feel it here, in my actual life, without the adrenaline and the crisis and the server rooms." She stopped. "It's the same. It's exactly the same without all of that." He didn't say anything for a moment. "Jun-seo." "Yes," he said quietly. "I'm here." "I'm not moving to South Korea," she said. "I have a life here, a career, people I'm responsible to." "I know." "And you can't move to Chicago because you have a corporate restructuring that's going to take 2 years and an FBI cooperation agreement that probably requires you to stay in jurisdiction." "Yes," he said. "So we're going to have to figure out what this actually looks like," she said, "which is going to be complicated and inconvenient and probably involve a lot of long flights and jet lag." "Yes," he said again, and there was something in the word that she'd been waiting, without knowing she'd been waiting, to hear. The sound of a man who has finally arrived somewhere he's been trying to get to for a long time and knows it and isn't going to say too much about it because some things are too complete for more words. "Come to Chicago," she said. "When the attorneys are done. Come here." "When?" he said. "Whenever you can." She paused. "Don't make me a fake emergency. Just come." "Early March," he said, "if the terms are finalized." "Early March," she said. "I'll be here." She hung up and sat in her quiet apartment with the skyline going fully dark outside and the coffee going cold beside her, and the particular feeling of something that has been held too long finally setting down, not gone, not resolved into nothing, but changed into a weight she could carry, that she wanted to carry, that felt like something real rather than something she'd been bracing against. He came in early March, not with security, not with arrangements, not with elaborate staging. He came with a carry-on bag and the particular look of a man who had been in airplanes and attorney offices for 2 months and was deeply tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. She met him at arrivals because she wanted to, and when he came through the gate and saw her, The 7 years and the fake wedding and the server room, and all the accumulated mass of everything between them compressed into the single specific moment of two people who have finally managed to be in the same place at the same time without a crisis shaping the air around them. He looked at her. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she said. They stood on the arrivals level at O'Hare with people moving past them in both directions and the fluorescent airport light overhead, and no dramatic backdrop and no ceremony, just the ordinary, extraordinary fact of the moment. And she reached out and took his hand the way she had 20 years ago in a garden in Chicago when they were 7 and 8 years old, and neither of them had known yet what they were beginning. His hand closed around hers. "You look tired," she said. "I am tired. I know a good place for coffee." "Yes," he said. "I'd like that." They walked out through the automatic doors and into the Chicago cold, and the city was gray and loud and indifferent in the specific way it always was, and the skyline was ahead of them through the cab windows as they drove in, and she watched him look at it. The way he'd always looked at things that mattered, quietly, carefully, like he was making sure it was real. And she thought about a garden a long time ago and a conversation about whether it was possible to be tired in a way sleep didn't fix, and how he'd said yes. He'd known even then. They both had. It had just taken the longest road either of them had ever walked to find the way back to where it started. And the road had cost them real things. Years, trust, the versions of themselves they might have been if none of it had happened. Those costs didn't disappear because the ending was good. The scar tissue was there. It would always be there. But they were here. The cab moved through Chicago traffic toward a coffee shop she knew on the north side, and his hand was still in hers on the seat between them, and the city moved past the windows in the ordinary way of a place that doesn't pause for anyone, and she didn't ask it to. This was enough. This was exactly enough.